now for the Black Firehouse Podcast, the only Ghostbusters podcast that discusses props, costumes, sets, and special effects, with your hosts, Austin Young and Dan Harshman.
You know, it's just occurred to me we really haven't had a completely successful test of this equipment.
I blame myself.
So do I. Let's get ready. Switch me on.
And it is episode 5 again.
For the third time.
For the third time. Episode 5 for the third time. Gosh, I hope we don't have to go for a fourth or fifth time. As always, for the Black Firehouse Podcast, this is your host, Dan Harshman, and his good friend,
Austin Young.
Austin, we are experiencing a plague of technical difficulties coming from my side of the connection tonight. I have no idea what's going on, but my internet connection keeps hiccuping and resetting where we're recording through, which is riverside.fm. We haven't had these issues before, but we're going to try and get through the entire cast in one shot with hopefully no more additional issues.
If nothing else, we can, jigsaw it together from multiple recordings.
Well, one of the things I was thinking is we could always do it from my phone, so that will be our backup plan. So if this recording doesn't work, we're going to go and I'm going to try recording from my phone and just hook up everything to there. The audio quality might suffer, but man, I've been dying to talk about this topic now for like a week. We are on part 1 of Proton Packs, Austin.
I still think we ought to just inevitably push it back and keep not talking about Proton Packs until...
You're right. We should talk about paper props today.
Yeah, dude, I'm all for that.
ESP cards, business cards, and invoices from Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2. You guys don't want to hear about Proton Packs. I mean, who is even remotely interested in a Proton Pack?
Nobody.
That's actually a lie. I'm hugely interested in Proton Packs.
Yeah, me too, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. So, interesting news in the Ghostbusters prop world. Austin, have you heard about this new commission for aluminum ghost traps?
I saw your post on it earlier. Admittedly, I did not click the link. I just saw the picture. I was like, oh, that's cool.
So it's pretty cool. This guy, and his name escapes me right now, and I'm so terrified to use any other internet device that I don't even want to look it up. But I'm going to look it up. So he did a huge project. I guess he's sponsored by Send Cut Send, and which is great because I've actually been using Send Cut Send for a few of even my projects. Notably, the IDW thrower has that forward block is for Send Cut Send, and then I'll be doing the entire base plate and the oversized V hook from Send Cut Send.
Oversized
really
V hook.
Yeah, so the IDW wand seems to be made in such a way that instead of like a standard thrower that has like a small machined aluminum hook, it has almost like the entire gun track is part of the hook. At least that's how Dan illustrated the IDW thrower in his comics. So that's going to be an interesting project because it looks like he has a Dixie hook on the pack itself, the way he draws it. Yeah. But the wand itself doesn't have a defined hook. It's like it's almost like the entire thing is just a massive rail system.
Interesting.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm sure that's going to get really gummed up and jammed pretty good and well. But yeah, so this is kind of disappointing. So his name on the forums for gbfans.com is Chiliark, and it looks like he has postponed the project, but I don't think that means it's over because he had a pretty successful interest thread going, but he did an almost completely 100% aluminum ghost trap out of parts that he ordered from Send Cut Send, and his kit version of this trap was going to be roughly $750. Now, just looking at the thread now, it looks like he's kind of pulled the project back. I don't know if he's refining his designs or rethinking the price or whatnot, but when it comes back, and I'm sure it will, because the guy was definitely on the level, it's going to be really exciting, because I don't think anybody has ever offered a full aluminum ghost trap. The only thing that kind of bothers me about it is the battery box.
Mm-hmm.
Seems to be a little too short. It's a Ghostbusters 2 style battery box.
Yeah.
And you see that a lot in the props that people build, is they will base their proportions off of Ghostbusters 2 traps, but then give it all the features of a Ghostbusters hero trap. And even in Ghostbusters 2, the hero trap was just a facelifted Ghostbusters 1, so it had that extended battery box.
I think the extended battery box is preferable for me. I think it looks a lot better.
I neither agree nor disagree. I really like both. There's something about that stubbiness of the Ghostbusters 2 traps that I really do enjoy. But for something that rolls out like a really nice shelf piece, because nobody's going to be wearing an aluminum ghost trap on their belt.
I would.
No,
I
you
had
wouldn't.
one. I absolutely would.
You would absolutely watch your belt fall off.
I carried around an almost entirely solid MDF trap on my belt for a long time, and
That's
I would.
Well, hold on now, because I carried around a solid multimedia mayhem ghost trap on my belt.
Okay, you win. That's what, a minimum of 60 pounds, right?
I'm pretty sure I used to call it the Manslayer. I was like, if you upset me, I'm just gonna throw my ghost trap at you. I mean, the thing's indestructible. I still have it. It was a gift from Borzu, who was so upset after building it. He was just like, I don't want to see this anymore. And so he sent it over to me.
Are you sure it was a gift and he wasn't just pawning it off onto you?
I mean, he may have been pawning it off on me. That's actually a possibility. But I always feel bad, because there's been times where I'm building like a different trap kit, and I'm just like, oh man, is there anything I can take off of this? And the answer is no. There's 100% nothing reusable off of the multimedia mayhem trap. I have another buddy of mine, Mike Kermabon, who disliked his kit so much that he put it in a box. And I even asked him if he was going to sell it. He's like, no, I will never allow anybody to have this kit.
It's going to get buried on a remote island somewhere.
But then, on the other side of the coin, Colton did, I don't know where he got it, because he did that project probably about a year, maybe a year and a half ago, in which he got his hands on an unbuilt multimedia mayhem ghost trap kit and put it together, and it was just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. He did all new custom cut aluminum plating on the side. He somehow managed to get the entire thing flushed out so that it was a gorgeous, gorgeous build. And so if you get a chance, Colton Cook, he's an incredible builder. He's built an incredible slime blower, and I know he's done a Proton Pack, and I want to say he did a reboot pack as well, but I can't quite remember.
He did, and it's gorgeous.
Yeah, he's just, I mean, his attention to detail, his craftsmanship, and really everything that he does is incredibly admirable. That's for prop news and everything going on kind of in the community. Let's go ahead and talk about what's on our workbench. Austin, you ready to keep moving forward, bud?
Always.
Listen. You smell something?
There's something very important I forgot to tell you.
What?
I collect spores, molds, and fungus.
Why?
All right, we're back with the Black Firehouse Podcast, and we are talking about what's on our workbench. Austin.
Dan.
What's on your workbench?
Stuff.
I love stuff.
Stuff and things. Currently,
what?
pumping out an Afterlife uniform. Just did some hose connectors from Afterlife. Had those.
Those came out great.
Yeah, my buddy Chris, I had him model them. Did a great job. And I had my buddy Ross, who's got a resin printer. I sent it his way, and it's like, hey, I need a couple of these. And he printed me 4 of them. I was like, even better.
And you're molding those, right?
Yes.
Now, are you hard rubber or what?
Whatever I can get my hands on.
That's fair.
I haven't ever used any of the what's it called? It's a product Task. It's a product Smooth On makes. Task. They're like ultra durable resins and stuff. I thought about maybe trying to use those, but I've never cast in rubber before. So I'm going to have to do some research on. I know you can cast one type of rubber and a different type of rubber, but not the other way around. So I'm going to brush up on that. But I'd like to do them out of some kind of a harder rubber eventually. I am going to have Chris make a couple of tweaks to this model and reprint it, though, because my prop OCD won't let me get over the tiny, minuscule thing that's different about it.
Now, are these all one pieces, or are you printing caps that are going on to leg hose connectors?
These are just one piece. All one piece.
Okay, so the caps wouldn't come off.
Yeah, and I'm sure eventually I'll do an Afterlife style that doesn't have the cap. So you can actually utilize a hose with it. But I really like that Afterlife, plug or whatever on the hose connector. I think that's such a cool detail.
I love that detail, and you don't really get to see it. And the OG Ghostbusters show up with hoses.
Yeah.
So they don't have it on their uniform, but on the Spangler surplus uniforms, all the leg hoses are plugged, and that was one of my favorite details on the new suits. Now, are you using a Nomax uniform to convert?
Yeah, just off the rack, because I'm not gonna wait a year for Ripstop from
Magnolia, just so you can paint it.
Eventually, I will for my personal super legit Afterlife uniform, but for this one, I'm rolling with Nomax.
What are you? What's your method for aging the uniform? Are you using an airbrush?
I thought about it, but I'm just hand brushing it. I mean, a couple of those behind the scenes videos and photos came out of the the costume team actually distressing the uniforms, and they're just sitting there with buckets of paint and chip brushes and going away at it. So it's like, okay, it's good enough for them. It's good enough for me.
Yeah, I was actually inspired by the fact that they're using chip brushes. Wayne Neumeyer did an incredible aging job on his jumpsuit before we saw the jumpsuits for Afterlife. His claim to fame is a Big Brother costume. I know it won some awards. He also did a Mark Watney costume that won some awards, and then finally in a Apollo suit that also won awards. That he did a lot of custom airbrush weathering on the seams to make it look a lot more worn in. I mean, the dude is, again, I guess I'm using this episode to just point out builders that I love, because he does a phenomenal job with his fabrics, and he used an airbrush to age his jumpsuit to make it look more worn in without ever seeing Afterlife, without even thinking about what the suits may look like in Afterlife. Yeah. And then Afterlife came out, and they were spot on to what Wayne had already done. And but to see the behind the scenes that they're just using chip brushes was inspiring to me, just because I don't want to buy another tool right now.
Well, I mean, and it's not really necessary. I mean, you can pull off a really decent job just by hand painting it. I mean, and in fact, it's more organic that way, because it's not a perfect stream of paint, coming out of the airbrush. You're not laying it down as methodically as you would with an airbrush. And if you look at the ones in Afterlife, thankfully there's been a lot of really great behind the scenes pictures that, you know, cast and crew and stuff
Mhm.
have posted. They're not really, they're more like stains than, I guess, built up dirt, you know, kind of that, like on a model of a spaceship or whatever, you know, they're always weathering the panel lines and kind of hitting those and making them
Mhm.
darker to kind of give the effect of, you know, dirt and grime gathering in those spots. And that's not really what the afterlife suits are trying to accomplish. They're more splotchy stains, and I mean, there's a little bit of that around kind of the panel lines and stuff, and around the pockets and stuff, but it's not.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, I don't know. It's just it's more organic and splotchy, and I've heard a couple of people refer to it as like, you know, they're ectoplasm stains. It's dried up ectoplasm. Like, okay, that makes sense, you know.
That's cool.
So yeah, I'm having fun with it, and you know, the
Have
pressure's
you?
not on to try and, you know, duplicate something exact, because no two of the jumpsuits are exactly alike, despite, you know,
Sure.
having multiple versions of the same suit for, you know, primary, hero, and stunt and all that stuff.
Have you gotten a chance to get Afterlife on home video?
No, I bought the digital release, and then I'm waiting on my box set to come in, my big Ultimate collection.
Very, very cool. Yeah, my box set came in last Monday, and I've really, really enjoyed it. Once you get it, we're gonna have to talk about it. Just the preview cut of Ghostbusters alone, we got to talk about. But
Yeah.
I've gotten to watch Afterlife twice now, once with my son and once with my daughter, and I like it even more. Like every time I watch it, I like a little bit more. It's like every time I watch it, I forgive the tropes and faux pas that I didn't quite like at first. Like it's definitely not, I would say, a perfect movie. But it's still good. It's still a sequel that we really had no business getting. Like
Yeah.
the Ghostbusters 3 should have been unmitigated trash. You know, with huge over the top stars and ridiculous amounts of action and like iPad Proton Packs and dumb stuff like that. But
And had
it
had
really
Dan Aykroyd
does.
been allowed to make his
Oh
version,
gosh,
you know, I'm sure that's what we would have gotten. Nothing against Dan Aykroyd. We
yeah,
love Dan Aykroyd, but you know.
we do. Uncle Dan, we love you. Bye vodka. Um, so my workbench has been really, really fun this weekend.
It has.
Um, it has, and I've been posting a lot to my personal hobby page, Harsh Hobbies Incorporated. And dude, so I finally got off my ass and repaired my tabletop drill press. I bought myself a drill press last Christmas out of gift cards that I got from work, and I never used it. And then 2 months later, we got a brand new puppy who decided that the power cable was a treat and like ate it into 3 pieces. Um, so I finally sat down on Saturday morning and repaired the power line, got everything running nice and smoothly again with it, and finally got to work. And dude, what a great weekend for building. I mean, like I worked on my superhero thrower. I drilled out the vintage Legree banjos for it. I was able to go ahead and install the trigger tip that I got from GB Fans. I ran all the front electrical cable into the gun body. And then even more exciting was I was finally able to do a lot of the cleanup and start dry fitting parts on my IDW wand. And I'm in love with it.
Me too. It's so cool.
It is so cool. I didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I am. You know, I had mentioned in our last episode that I was getting some custom made acrylic tubes for them, and Cole Funseth made them for me. One is for a semi-hero thrower, and then one was just a practice, and I wanted it for my IDW thrower, and I got that installed, and it was a little bit of a pain in the butt. I ended up having to cut into the actual tube itself so that there would be a little bit of ply, and then basically jammed the acrylic tube into the front handle, so it's never coming out again.
Which is going to
But it
suck
looks so...
if you ever drop it and shatter it, and then you're going to have to try and get the rest of it out of the front tube.
Well, you know, the lucky thing about it is I think that would be easier than you might think, because there's no electrics in it.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, once the light kit goes into it, it will have just a little bulb in there, so you can get the light effects and everything. But for the most part, it's a very simple build. There's no extension mechanism on it, and you know, the biggest detail is, instead of gun ears, it has what I'm calling a blast shield, which is again one of the parts that I got from Send Cut Send, and it's just this huge hunk of 1/2-inch aluminum, and it's a trapezoid shape, and I have a set screw on the bottom there, so that it doesn't.
It reminds me of, there was an old Kenner Batman toy that was like this weird rifle. What it was the Stormtrooper rifle. They reused the same mold,
Mm-hmm.
but they put this giant bat symbol thing like right on the front on the barrel, and so that's I don't know, for whatever reason, immediately when you sent me that picture, that's just what flashed in my head, was this ridiculous Kenner toy with this giant, shield on the end of the barrel.
It reminds me of the pilot episode Proton Packs for the real Ghostbusters.
Are we talking about the like the original pitch reel that has the
original pitch
where they're
video,
all in khaki uniforms? Okay.
Yeah, and then of course the Kenner toys, when you look at them, it had the wands have those big squares on the end. And it was great because when I was a kid, I used to always draw that on there for some reason. Even though it was never in the cartoon, it was something that always stuck with me. So, like, building the IDW thrower, there's a little part of me that's just like, it's kind of like building the movie accurate thrower of how I saw it when I was a kid, which is making it a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And then
it's a really interesting build, because it's, you're taking a 2-dimensional thing and trying to translate it to 3 dimensions, and you've got such kind of creative freedom in a way, because it's drawn a specific way, but it's also up to your interpretation of it.
Oh, absolutely. Well, so far I'm very happy with my interpretation.
Now, me too. It looks awesome. The rear handle, the front handle, do they get painted black? Okay.
They do. So the grips that I originally bought for it, and that's one of the ones that's on there right now, is a bicycle grip, and it's black. And I was going to order another one because I totally screwed up the cutting on the other one, but I did a bit more searching and found the same kind of ergonomic grips, but in gray. And not only in gray, but the way they're patterned, it actually gives me a cut template on it. So instead of the grips wrapping all the way around the gun tubes, they're going to be halfway on there. And in the comics, the grips are gray compared to the rest of the wand being black. So I'm really excited about those to come in. And, they'll go on last, because really it's just going to be a little bit of glue, and they'll go on there.
Are they like a hard rubber grip, or? Okay.
They are. Yeah, they're a hard rubber. It's very much in the same vein as doing gun grips for a normal Gagnon pack. So again, more callbacks, using a lot more modern build techniques and technology, but still plenty of callbacks to norm packs, and callbacks to how I drew childhood, Proton packs, and then there's even a lot of found part fun in it. The side discs, I noticed that how Dan Schoening had drawn them, they weren't really how the actual throwers are. It was more like just a big circle kind of thing. So I found, 1/2 inch spacers, aluminum spacers, and then of course that front knob next to the clipboard, I'm a huge fan of, because that is a
It's
tattoo
so cool
gun
looking.
grip.
Like it's ridiculous, but it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, and Dan Schoening draws that knob in, and you can tell he draws in texture. So it's like, okay, I know it's textured, so I'm assuming knurled, like the movie one, but he draws it as long as the clipboard valve. And I'm like, this thing is ridiculous. And I thought for the longest time I was going to have to get it custom fabricated, but through numerous eBay searches and Google image searches, I ended up coming across tattoo gun grip, which is not something
You'd think I would have recognized it right off the bat, because I built a Freddy Krueger glove for one of my tattoo artists years ago. That instead of the 4 blades and the fingers, I put tattoo guns on the ends. And
cool.
I couldn't find anywhere that would sell me the grips without having some kind of tattoo license. What? And so I was like, well, fuck that. I'll just make my own. And I stuck chunks of aluminum in the lathe, and I turned them down and made my own. So I'm really surprised I didn't immediately recognize that as a tattoo gun piece.
Well, I'm surprised too, just because you're kind of like the wizard with identifying parts and pieces, and esoteric Ghostbusters background props and all that.
I'm sorry to disappoint you. I'll turn over my
letdown.
Esoteric props card or whatever.
Yeah, just turn it in at the front office. And then finally, of course, is that front and rear cylinder, which are just simply quite simply from gbfans.com. It's the palm rest cylinder. And because there's not a lot of detail in the one in the comic, I just bought 2 and drilled the back one out so I can, add a clippered barb on that to run a green line. And yeah, man, I'm stoked with it. I'm really excited. I'm excited about how much I was able to get done.
It's always great when you can have a productive weekend, and you just, even if it's little stuff, like if they're not huge steps towards completing something overall, but like it's still so satisfying.
I don't know, man. With my superhero thrower, the electronics, that was a huge success, but I installed the spring for the pop mechanism.
Do you have like the ridiculously long spring that like folds back over on itself like the hero props?
No, not the screen accurate one. I just went with RJ's core pop mechanism, and it was a massive pain in the ass. It was a massive pain in the ass, because you end up having a set screw, which ends up being the track that the handle rotates on. And that's what that set screw is making sure, the front handle only rotates so much. But one end of the spring has to loop on that set screw inside of the forward handle, and then is pulled back to another set screw that's on the back of the actual extension mechanism. So there's no light in the handle. I put a rubber stopper in there so that the barrel light sat nice and flush up against the acrylic tube. So I can't see what I'm doing. And I'm basically just feeling around until finally I get one end of the spring looped under that front set screw, and then pull it back and put it on that back set screw. That was a challenge, especially with, electrical wires all sticking out of it. Like it never ceases to amaze me that they managed to build these damn things in 2 weeks, where I'm like, I'm getting my ass kicked by a
that
spring.
pop mechanism has been something that people have been trying to figure out for years, and there's been so many different methods and versions that people have come out with. And I guess they all, for the most part, have worked. But then once you realize and see how the originals were done, it's like, oh my God, that actually worked.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And then it was a whole, it pushed it. And like RJ's pop mech is damn close to what they used, but his mechanism pulls the spring pulls the barrel forward, whereas the real one was that, like you said, that ridiculous long coil of spring that like attached to the rear cylinder and then ran on to the front, and then when you would pull a little nail that was welded together, that would push the whole thing.
It's nuts, dude.
It is. They don't build them like they used to. No, but we're gonna talk about that today. So let's get into Proton Packs, dude. We have a 2-part episode, and then we're gonna finish the 2-part episode with a third episode. That's going to be a round table with of course special community guests who we're not gonna announce them right now, but you ready to get moving?
Yeah, baby, let's do it.
What is that thing you're doing?
It's technical. It's one of our little toys.
The Proton Pack is not a toy.
I guess that's right.
Proton Packs, absolutely 100% my favorite prop ever. Austin, yours?
Yep. And that was a great episode. All right.
That was a great episode. Okay, guys, wrap it up.
Yeah,
Cool.
no.
Thank you. We'll see you next episode.
No, yeah, definitely, probably, hands down, my favorite movie prop of all time.
Dude, so we're going to talk about Proton Packs. We're going to talk about the ground build-up, how they built the Proton Pack, going into it, and we're probably only going to be able to stick to just Ghostbusters, because, I mean, we have about an hour left in the cast, and, God knows if we have more technical difficulties, we might have to start over again, or we'll just start from this point. I'll just splice audio together.
Yeah.
Dude, there's something about Proton Packs. I don't know what it is. I think that it's the same thing. Like, don't get me wrong, I love Star Wars. Love Star Wars. I have a Han Solo replica, and I have, my Sterling replica, and I have a couple lightsabers. And I feel like when I wear a Proton Pack is how Star Wars obsessives must feel when they put on like Jedi robes,
Yeah.
and a lightsaber, or just igniting a lightsaber for the first time. I mean, I just what does the Proton Pack mean to you?
Oh, man. Life.
It's loaded. I know.
It means life.
Life.
It means life, dude. It's the answer to everything. It's, what is it, 42? 42. The Proton Pack is 42.
40. I end up feeling so cool.
Yeah, it's real pretty to look at, right?
It is.
It's a beautiful, gorgeous prop, and it's crazy to think, like you said, they had 2 weeks to put these things together, and that they're as cool looking as they are. And yeah, we talked about this a little bit when the first time we tried to record this, but you put it on and you feel cool. You feel powerful.
You do.
And it's...
But not like malevolently powerful.
No.
Like, I feel like I could, the Ghostbusters propaganda worked. The song Saving the Day.
Yeah.
It worked.
Yeah.
Because when I put on a Proton Pack, I feel like I can defend everybody. And like, I now have the tools and the talent.
Yeah.
To protect the world.
Yeah, you feel like you can take anything on. There's nothing that you can't face when you've got a Proton Pack on.
Even as a kid, I remember, just, if you were scared of going down the hallway, or, scared of monsters in your closet or something, but if you strapped on your Kenner Proton Pack,
Mm-hmm.
those fears went away.
I mean, you know how many times I went to the bathroom as a kid where I was scared to go by myself down the hallway, but I would put my Proton Pack on, and suddenly I was just like brave as fuck. And it's like, I can go take a piss now, no big deal, all by myself.
Absolutely.
Because I got this thing on. It's crazy, like that confidence boost that it gives you.
Mm-hmm. one of the funnest things I ever did was it was probably about 2017, I would say. Ghostbusters Answer the Call had come out, and I got the Answer the Call Proton Pack for my daughter, and we found my first or second jumpsuit that my grandmother had put together. And so she puts it on, and she puts on the Proton Pack, and we turn all the lights out in the house, every single one. It's just me and my daughter in the house, and I light up the Mattel thrower, and we went around the house busting ghosts. And it was so fun.
And you had more fun than she did, I bet.
No, because I have photos of her. She just loved it. I mean, she was just laughing, and like she was chasing ghosts into here and there, and trying to go into like closets and screaming out, "Daddy, there's a ghost here! Come on, we got to get him!" And
that's awesome.
She's making it. But that was the kind of fun that the Proton Pack meant as a kid, and now as an adult, we have some disposable income, so we can really get into replicating these things.
Yeah.
But before replicating them, where did the Proton Pack start? I mean, who was the first person to come up with the idea of the Proton Pack?
I mean, it's Dan Aykroyd, right?
Uncle Dan, all the way.
And, I don't know how much influence, maybe Harold Ramis had on any of the gear, really, But, I
don't know.
It would be something interesting to find out, like if he... like with the script itself, kind of has to take Dan's outlandish ideas and kind of turn them into something a little more palatable by normal people.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, those initial concepts with like the wrist mounted antennas
the wrist mounted antennas popping out. They're so silly.
Yeah,
they're very Dan Aykroyd. They're very far out there. They're very strange.
Yeah.
But they're cool.
Yeah, and I'd be interested to find out too, because we know Stephen Dane.
Well, we know Stephen Dane designed the Ecto-1, and his crew built everything. But there's some concept art in making Ghostbusters, which. Again, a reprint comes with the Ghostbusters Ultimate Edition. And apparently, I thought this was cool, it's actually courtesy of Paul Rudolph of SpookCentral.com.
Yeah, I saw that post earlier.
Yeah, because Paul had a PDF copy, and Sony actually was able to go to him and get that and reprint the book. But there's some concept art in there of the Proton Pack, beyond just the little antenna coming off the wrist, and which is almost like this kind of Predator over the shoulder kind of big vacuum thing that you kind of strap into. So obviously there was some thought done by people in between Dan Aykroyd's original concept and what we saw, but we don't really know who ultimately said, this is how you design. This is what the Proton Pack looks like.
Yeah, I mean who came up with that finalized design that would be turned into that prop. Like that, I would love to just talk to somebody involved in the production.
Anybody.
That has any kind of knowledge about that, or anybody that was involved in the making of the props themselves.
Yeah. And it's not going to be the actors, because the actors, bless Ghostbusters fans, bless ghost heads, they always end up going to the actors with these questions, and I'm just like, they don't know.
They
don't care.
They don't obsess over it. They don't sit there in their trailer with their Proton Pack and
Mr. Murray, what color was your jumpsuit 35 years ago?
Seafoam green.
Yeah, that's right. Everything was dyed green.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, somebody out there has to still be alive that worked on these damn things. We just got to find out who they are and track them down.
I don't know, man. It was the 80s.
That's true.
There's a lot of live fast, build a proton pack, and die young.
Man, what a legend, though.
Right? So we know of some of the inspiration, though.
Mm-hmm.
We definitely, in the entertainment industry, prop building, costume design, you end up with these inspiration boards where you're taking ideas from. A great example is, if I was going to design like the arachnids from Starship Troopers, I would look at other arachnids. So you end up with kind of this board of different pictures and reference and stuff. And the Proton Pack has such a absolute reference block, namely, I would say the cyclotron of being that radar system from an aircraft.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if that's something that they found at Apex in their junkyard, or if that's something that they just came across, looking at photos, and they said, hey, this would be a really cool thing.
Yeah.
And, I've seen other people come out with like particular camera boxes or projector boxes and say, hey, this kind of looks like the wand body. And it does.
Yeah.
But the Proton Packs were not built from found parts. There's found parts on them.
Yeah.
But it is almost a 100% custom build. And they started with layered foam.
And, that's something I actually wanted to ask about after our discussion the first time we tried to record this episode.
Right. First, second, third?
Yeah. I've lost count.
Yeah.
Where did that information come from that they started as layered foam? Do we remember?
I'm relatively certain it's also in the Making Ghostbusters book.
Okay.
I don't have it in front of me. I would have to go back and look. But I know it came about as saying, the main shape of the Proton Pack was made out of layered foam.
Yeah.
And it was backed up by the evidence of looking especially over on the ion arm side, that you can see the striations where the separate layers of the foam are.
Yeah. I'm not questioning the information. I don't remember where that came from initially.
I don't either. But there's absolutely nothing wrong questioning that information. That's what we do. That's how we make new discoveries. Because one of the things we had mentioned last time was, how little we actually know.
Yeah.
And by last time, I mean the recording that nobody will ever hear.
Maybe when we have a Patreon, we'll upload our failed attempts at recording.
Yeah, there you go.
What a perk.
And then, so they made the layer foam, and then we had that interesting discussion. I think this is important for people. The cosmetic ribs. We were at a disagreement on this.
Yes. I was right, and you were wrong. No, I'm kidding.
You know what? I got to be honest, man. The more I look at them, I'm questioning it. I'm questioning the conventional wisdom. The conventional wisdom has always been that they are pieces of wood.
Yeah.
Be it is it balsa wood or some kind of ply or something like that was cut into strips and fixed on there. Because a lot of people point in to the direction of saying, hey, this is wood grain. And you had mentioned that, well, I don't think that's wood grain. I think that's just markings from shoddy castings.
Yeah, and sanding
and sanding, and the way that it bends around, it's more like a Sintra or a styrene. And the more I looked at it, and in the time before our first attempt at this episode, I don't disagree, but I don't think we'll ever really know.
Yeah, I mean, that master is long gone. And again, unless we can find somebody that worked on the movie, that was in the prop department, that either helped build the original or saw the original book or whatever, yeah, we'll never know. It's all speculation at this point. But I just feel like there's some evidence there that it may not necessarily be pieces of wood. To me, they look like they were pieces of plastic that were heated and bent around, the foam.
And then tacked into place.
Yeah.
And, I had questioned you, hey, would plastic bend like that? And he said, well, absolutely. And it was interesting. I actually got my evidence for that today, in which when I was putting on one of the front knobs on my IDW thrower, I tightened it, and sure enough, the plastic buckled in almost identically. And I was just like, oh, well, son of a bitch.
Well, especially, too, if, I don't know how fast they're working on these, but, probably pretty fast. Yeah. If they are attempting to tack down the ends, those little ends, with, finishing nails or whatever that is, while the plastic is still soft from having just been heated to bend over,
sure,
even more so, you're gonna get it to buckle and dent like that.
Absolutely. So it's definitely, we're not sure. What we do know, though, is that after they made the buck out of layered foam, after they applied the cosmetic ribs, they molded it. And they took a big cast and did straight fiberglass resin. Definitely not on the same quality as today. Today, a lot of the makers, they pour in that first resin gel coat to really capture the nice crisp details of their master mold. And they didn't do that, which probably even contributed more to not really knowing what precisely a lot of these materials are. Because,
that could be why nobody's nailed down the texture. Maybe the texture is also a result of shitty castings.
Yeah, absolutely. We know that they did shitty paintings because the light is bleeding through on Dan Aykroyd's pack in a couple scenes.
Yeah.
We know on the superhero that they have tape over there on the power cell, which is also likely covering up light bleeds.
Yeah, that just blows my mind. It doesn't. I think I'm more surprised that the tape is still there than the fact that they put it there.
Well, through multiple movies too.
Yeah.
Like the fact that you can see the tape existing there in Ghostbusters 1, and that it's still sitting there in Ghostbusters 2. Nobody was just like, hey, let's shoot this with some spray paint. And,
Yeah. It speaks to, there's probably, there's no time between takes to go hit it with paint, probably. It's just like, hey, we've got some black tape, throw it down. That'll fix it. Nobody's ever going to notice.
Well, so here's the weird thing. The Proton Pack is such an enigma of a prop. Because nowadays you have props where you can tell that they spent a considerable amount of time on the quality of it. The hero lightsabers for the Star Wars movies are a great example. Or the pistols for Men in Black, which were all custom cast, pot metals and finished and everything like that. So you have these aspects on the Proton Pack where it's really, for lack of a better word, fucking shoddy.
Yeah.
But then you had things like all of the aluminum parts on the entire pack they're ugly welded, but they're not the ugliest welds I've ever seen, and they're also rather precise for a rush job.
Yeah, well, and all of the shoddiness and all that stuff, to me, is part of the charm.
Yeah.
And,
the wonk.
Yeah, the wonk is awesome. I love it.
I love the wonk.
That's something, it gives everything character. And honestly, that's something I think is missing from a lot of modern props, because everything now is so precise and so
everything
pristine.
Now is 3D printed.
Yeah, I miss kit bashing. I miss throwing a bunch of random shit together and making something new.
Hey, even the Afterlife Proton Packs, they're beautiful.
Yeah.
But if you look at the OG packs compared to, say, the Phoebe pack ends up being a little more gorgeous because they were still kit bashing with it.
Yeah.
Whereas the OG packs, really everything's 3D printed, and you can tell. There's no real weld lines on there. Everything's just kind of placed together.
Mm-hmm.
They're gorgeous. I'm not trying to say that they aren't. They obviously are. But so much of the wonk is gone.
Yeah. Which,
Um,
I mean, I understand to a degree wanting to get rid of that stuff, but to me, I feel like they should have left it.
I was surprised that Afterlife ended up going in the direction of scanning the superhero for their new packs instead of using the existing molds for the Anovos legacy packs.
Yeah. Now,
Um, yeah,
I don't know if they. I mean, the making of book says that they used a 3D scan, right? And I'm sure that they did 3D scan it, but we don't know for sure if that's what they ended up using. They could have used, a casting and made a mold of it, and then modified that, cleaned it up, and then made a new master. We don't know for sure.
we don't know for sure, but looking at the photos that we have, I mean, the only wonk in the Afterlife packs comes from that bend that you'll get in a lot of quick castings,
Mm-hmm.
where the kind of the center line of the Proton Pack is kind of starting to buckle in.
Yeah.
But the ribs and everything are really, really perfect and lack a lot of the texture. I'd say all the texture that the originals had.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I miss it though.
So they threw on these aluminum parts that were over-engineered.
Ironically, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, things like the weld between the booster tube and the ion arm is like completely unnecessary.
I 100% disagree.
Well, no, I mean, like, no, I love it. As in, I want it on all my packs because it looks cool.
Mm-hmm.
But from a structural standpoint, once everything's bolted, or in the original pack's case, riveted in, is there really a point to that?
I feel like there is. I feel like it.
You
I
do?
feel like it adds. Having had several ion arms knocked off of my packs in the past, that
Oh, you think it was giving it additional structural support because only dirtbags grab ion arms?
exactly, yeah. No,
That
I
could
mean,
be.
I feel like having that little bridge there between the ion arm and the booster tube, I think takes some of the stress off of the ion arm. Like, I think that's the whole point of it,
That could
so
be.
that way, if
That's
it
a
does
good point.
get, Bill Murray's not going to give a shit if he smacks it into the wall. He's not going to try to be
No.
careful.
I still think Bill Murray's responsible for that gigantic bit of damage on the bottom of the cyclotron on the superhero.
Oh, where all the paint's rubbed off, and you can see
Oh, yeah.
primer and
Where it's
fiberglass and
all
Bondo.
the way down to the fiber. And I'm pretty sure I know what was happening when that damage happened.
Yeah, I remember you posting it's the picture, like when it's behind the scenes when they're on the temple set. They're sitting on the steps.
Yep, he's sitting on the steps, and the cyclotron happens to be in that same spot. And I'm just like, if I'm putting on my Bill Murray hat and pretending I'm Bill Murray, I give zero shits about these props. In fact, I hate them. And like, I don't think he cared. I think he just sat down and the whole thing just crunched, and he was just like, "Oh, neat.
Oh well,
Pay me."
So where, if at all, because I don't remember off the top of my head, where is the superhero utilized in Ghostbusters 2, or is it?
It is. It actually is utilized in Ghostbusters 2, but we never see it because the entire scene was cut.
Oh, it's the stuff with Lewis, right?
It is.
Okay,
the
that's
entire
right.
stuff with Lewis.
Yeah.
Yep. And
it has
interesting,
that cyclotron damage in that footage?
It does.
Okay.
It does. It has the cyclotron damage in that sequence, and not only that, but the bumper has been flipped over in that scene.
Yeah, it's been corrected. Okay. Yeah, it's coming back to me now. I remember.
Yep, so the blue label, the motor synchronous label, is now on the opposite side and upside down in Ghostbusters 2,
Nice.
which is how it was found at Planet Hollywood.
It's since been corrected, right?
It has,
Yeah.
Unfortunately. I'm a little bummed that got corrected. Like, I understand for posterity's sake, but ultimately the superhero I think was the first Proton Pack built.
Yeah.
It is the only Proton Pack that has numerous aberrations from all of the other Proton Packs. I think it is the most visually interesting of all the Proton Packs, and I also think it is the one Proton Pack that has the most mystique behind it. From the bumper having been flipped, so the motor synchronous label is sitting in that cavity.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only Proton Pack that originally did not have any spacers between the Alice frame and the motherboard. And then, all the other Hero Proton Packs, of course, have hockey pucks in them.
Yeah, sure. Sure they do.
Oh, the great hockey puck debate. Because back at 1983, they just had baskets of hockey pucks.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said the last time we recorded this. It makes total perfect sense that, hey, we need spacers for these packs. What can we use? Let's see. We've got this entire workshop full of wood, but I think we got to run down to the sporting goods store and pick up some hockey pucks. That's what'll do it, Like, no, guys, they're wood.
They're wood.
They're wood.
They're wood.
It takes 5 minutes to cut down a piece of wood and round it off on a belt sander and then hit it with some black spray paint.
Well, no. Clearly, they took oversized hockey pucks to do the lower spacers because they're square.
Yes.
Because the concept, I guess, was because it absorbed shock. Like, that's not what they're doing.
Well, and I understand the thought process behind that. Like, I get it, but
it's not a car.
Yeah,
Austin.
but that's not what it's for. Like,
they're displacing weight, so the damn things don't hurt so much.
Yeah. The prop guys don't care that much about their props being comfortable on the actors.
I'm really worried about the vibrations from the Proton Pack.
Yeah.
Maybe we should have padded Bill Murray's feet.
I don't think they make Nikes in his size.
They do. He's a human being.
No, but his ego is so massive, and it all goes straight to his feet.
Yeah. No, that. So,
anyway.
So, it's also one of the only packs. It didn't have neck foam, Austin.
At all, ever? In the movie?
At all.
Okay.
It had it in Ghostbusters 2. They added neck foam for Ghostbusters 2. But the shots in which I was able to figure out, hey, this thing is right up against the motherboard, I then noticed that there is no neck foam on that thing. And, everybody has heard the stories of Bill Murray complaining about the weight of the Proton Packs.
Yeah.
And it was because he was wearing that superhero, which was only used in the rooftop scenes by Ernie Hudson or Bill Murray, respectively. But no wonder he hated it. The shoulder straps were on backwards. Mm-hmm. There was no neck foam. The weight wasn't displaced. And it was also the only pack that had a working bar graph.
Yeah.
Which means there was probably additional circuitry in it to drive that bar graph.
Yeah. Very true.
But that comes back to the whole over-engineered. You have this thing that was hodgepodge together. Layers of foam, quick fiberglass, but then really nice aluminum custom parts. And then you get this proton thrower, the neutrino wand, which is a fucking work of art. Mm. We touched upon the spring-loaded mechanism, but what the hell were they thinking? It was a sight gag.
Yeah.
They're pretending it's their penis. But the engineering behind it is genius. I mean, it took us years to even come up with ideas that kind of worked as well. I mean, I remember back in the day people coming up with ideas using toilet paper rollers.
Just about to mention that, yeah.
On how to spring that thing forward. It took us years to figure out something that was even remotely, how do we have this lever work and the front barrel rotate? And this was something that they threw together in 2 weeks.
Well, I mean, not only that, but it took years for anybody to realize that it wasn't activated by twisting the front barrel. It was activated by the green lever. I remember...
Which I'm
I think it was on ASAP, a site about props, in some random thread where I first read, hey, no, if you watch the movie, when Ray comes out of the elevator, he pulls down on that green lever and the front tip pops out. And my mind was like, I didn't believe it. I was like, whatever. And I go and I put the movie on, and it's like, holy shit. Oh my God.
Whole world.
Like, yeah.
My whole world.
And
it's incredible.
Yeah. And so then suddenly everybody's thought process has shifted from like, well, how are we going to make this thing pop out from twisting that front barrel to, oh, it's that lever. So what is the twist for? And, ultimately the twist is a comfort thing, maybe. Like, I don't know.
Building my superhero thrower, I think it was ultimately a comfort thing.
Yeah.
I think there's evidence, especially on what part is appropriately called the gun block. There is space for an additional bolt to go in.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that the real ones were threaded. And the only reason a bolt would go in there would be to lock the position of the barrel.
Yeah.
But that was obviously taken out. But then they still allowed the front handle to twist. And but it's such a cool feature. Like, I have a hard time with high-end prop replicas and the barrel doesn't twist.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, are you even doing it right? Like, it doesn't even feel right anymore. Anytime I hold a thrower in which the barrel doesn't twist, I'm just like, oh, neat.
I mean, I'm never going to let you touch my Afterlife thrower then, because it doesn't have a rotating barrel. I just went static with it because I was kind of in a rush at the time when I was trying to finish it. So I was just like, it's fine.
I'll break it.
That's okay. I can
set
fix
it right. I'll set it right. You can fix it.
Yeah.
Well, I know a lot of people. It looks like even the Hasbro ones at one point had the idea of the barrel rotation being in there, because I guess some folks have been able to reverse engineer those.
Interesting. I hadn't seen that.
Yeah. So yeah, they put together these ones. They have this crazy popping mechanism. The front barrel twists on it, but then at the same time, they have a flash bulb in the front that's running in its electrics through a pneumatic fitting, through a pneumatic hose to the rest of the gun ear, and then there's a momentary switch on the front end, which I personally believe, I have no proof, but I believe that switch activated the flash bulb.
Yeah.
And then I think the rear switch had the barrel lights, and but they had 3 different color lights in the barrel to make it light up, and then all the way back to a crazy sequence of lights on it, with every switch actually doing something different to the light sequence, including a $1,500 aviation bar graph.
Which probably cost them $20 at Apex.
Who the fuck comes up with this, Austin?
I don't know, but I'm glad they did. Even though I'm never going to have one of those bar graphs, but it's still cool as shit.
I mean, I'm never going to say never on the bar graph, but I mean, like, who comes up with that? Who says, hey, we have 2 weeks. Let's make the most overtly complicated piece of electrical equipment in the history of movie making ever.
In 1984.
But has there ever been another prop that is as electrically intricate?
Oh, I'm sure there probably has been, but I couldn't tell you what it is off the top of my head.
Well, they suck. Whoever they are.
It's not a Proton Pack.
Trying to outdo Ghostbusters.
Yeah,
exactly. It's not a Proton Pack, so it's not as cool. How dare. You can't dethrone the king.
Yeah. So I do want to go back really quick, talking about the gun, the gun track.
Yeah.
You were talking earlier about your IDW thrower, and
yes,
how in the comics the entire gun track itself is like a rail system. Has there ever been any evidence that the gun track's original intention was to work as a rail system for, as the hook itself for the wand? Do we know? Because it seems like that's what it would be.
It does, doesn't it?
Along with the fact that, you've got those discs on the bottom of it, and some of I think it may be the superhero, I don't remember, but at least one of them has a disc under the gun hook. And so why does it have that detail if it's getting covered up by a gun hook? Unless it was added after the fact.
You're maybe postulating that the gun tracks never really reached their final design.
Yeah. Like, maybe they started prototyping and found out that it's just too clunky and it's not going to work as the hook system, so they just stuck the V-hook on top of it. Well, really,
with your idea, all that they would have to do to finish that system would be milling out the sides of the track.
Yeah.
So where the track is raised up compared to the rest of the bottom plate, if they put in, a 45-degree angle and cut out in that area, they could realistically then have a completely different hooking system.
Yeah.
And those discs could have been, at least the rear disc could have been a stop.
Yeah, I mean, it's always been something that I've thought about. Like, was that the original intention of that gun track, was to work as a hook, as a rail system? Or
I mean, I would absolutely buy that as a concept. I mean, the shape is all there, with the angled fore, so it slips in a little bit easier. Actually, with as large as the gun track is, if that is true, and they had completed that system, I think reholstering your thrower would be 100% easier.
Oh yeah, I mean, there'd be no need for that little
much
hook
larger
on the back.
target.
Yeah, it can be done. I have done it. You can reholster it.
I did it once. And no one believes me. Hell, half the time I think I'm lying about it.
It's just some crazed, drunken dream you had. Oh, I did it. I swear I did it.
One time I holstered my own Proton Pack. I did it, I swear.
Okay, Grandpa, let's get you back inside for your nap.
Let's get you some of Uncle Aykroyd's vodka and get you back into bed.
Oh, jeez. I've never been able to do it on any other pack but this one specific pack that I built. And I don't know, I mastered it with that thing. I could do it like 4 out of 10 times.
Did your gun hook have a severe angle to it?
No, it was a GB1 angle.
GB1? Mm-hmm. That was one of the improvements, and we'll talk about that another episode more in depth, but one of the things I loved about the superheroes was the angle of the V-hook, because the Proton Pack looks so much cooler with a super angled thrower on it.
Yeah, I dig.
At least I always thought so.
That's one of the
I thought
elements of GB1 that I don't particularly like compared to GB2 is I don't care for the less steep angle of the thrower.
Yeah, agreed. But even the gun hook, though, I mean, even if the rail, the gun track was an abandoned concept, so then they throw together the V hook, and it's genius in its simplicity. I'm in love with the prop, Austin. I mean, from such humble beginnings of being antennas mounted to somebody's wrist, to this very intricate, lots of interesting angles, lots of interesting greeblies. The fact that they're not gluing circuit boards to this, that they're going in the direction of using pneumatic fittings, pneumatic pieces, pneumatic parts with some hefty electrical components, resistors on there to fill out the details. It's so beautiful, and it's such a well-made prop. And we joke about the wonk, we joke about how shoddy it is, but the reality here is the props were so damn well made that they ended up reusing them.
Yeah. Well, and
that's
going, the wonk and stuff like that. I mean, I don't typically like to go down the headcanon route, but when you think of stuff in universe, Egon and Ray are building these things by themselves in a workshop. Like,
Sure.
they're not going to be perfect. They're not going to look like they were cranked out on a CNC machine. And to me, again, that adds to the charm of it. You know, it adds character and believability, and to me, it just sells it even more that these were built by a couple of guys in a workshop. You know.
Yeah. So, exploring kind of that headcanon, we had gone into this a little bit more, and we kind of dusted over this, but we should hit on the texture of the Proton Pack. I had originally thought that the texture was the result of the foam itself, and it may still very well be.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of spaces on the Proton Pack in which that texture is still visible, where it wouldn't make sense to be the planar level of the foam. I would just say, especially on the cyclotron, where that almost iron texture is present the entire way. Where do we think that texture came from? How do we think that came about?
I mean, I think it's a combination of things. I think it's a combination of, the texture of the foam still being somewhat present. If they're throwing this thing together and trying to crank them out as quick as they can, I'm sure they threw down, whatever primer or sealer on top of it. And they probably didn't go back and sand it out and try and make it look smooth and nice and pretty, or maybe they started with the ribs. Yeah. And that's why the ribs lack the texture, and that's why they look like they have sanding marks in them, and then they just thought, they just like, well, this is too much work, I mean, anything's possible. It could also be a result of the fiberglass material, and because this is something that just popped in my head. I've never actually gone to compare, but is the texture identical on every casting?
I haven't gone back and looked. Now that you mentioned that, that'll be something that we'll have to come back to next episode.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look into that, because if it's different, then it's sure as hell not something that was on the master. It's something in the casting process.
Well, but then you have weird texture details like the cyclotron rings, which very much communicate the fact that they were machined.
Yeah.
Now that could be, again, from them being sanded down, so they just ended up with that pattern on it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I mean, it just illustrates how little we actually know about the fabrication process of the original Proton Pack, of the master build, the foam and plastic and wood or whatever. I mean,
well,
we just don't know.
And there's also a possibility that maybe the texture was intentional. Maybe they were trying to convey the idea of cast iron or, some kind of cast metal. Like, we just don't know.
Well, and that's the thing. It communicates much better on screen to have multiple textures.
Yeah. And and that's a possibility too. It could be intentional just to break up the whole, the different textures of the pack and to make it more visually interesting. Entirely.
But it ends up, it's a symphony of whatever it was, intentional or not. It's a symphony of perfection, because it just comes off looking so damn cool.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. And, even going back to the Afterlife packs, they've gone back and added a texture for the Afterlife packs.
They did.
It's a lot finer. It definitely reads more like cast iron, like a cast iron skillet or something like that. It's got a much finer detail to it. But I still love it. Like, it still adds that character and that sense of realism to it.
It does. It adds a lot of great texture. And then they mount the whole damn thing on an Alice frame, which we talked about this again in the failed recording, but it's like the perfect mounting system. I'm still bummed that they didn't use it for Answer the Call. They went with that very convoluted, punctured motherboard where everything mounts onto it. But I was still surprised that they didn't use a pack frame.
I mean,
those packs.
I get the motherboard is. I think the intention is that it's supposed to look like everything's modular, right? I mean,
Sure.
and I think that's the point that kind of comes across in the movie, where you've got the multiple versions, as the movie progresses. And to me, it would only make sense to then have a frame that could mount to that type of motherboard. But yeah, for them to have not used any sort of frame and just stuck straps directly to it is kind of a weird choice to me.
It was.
And I love those props. I think they're great. And
They are. And we're going to talk about them one day.
Maybe. No, we will.
No, we are.
Absolutely go.
No, I want to learn about them. I mean, they're great props. They are as visually interesting as the traditional first generation Proton Pack.
Yeah.
And then, but talking about mounting, one of the interesting things I thought was, again, it was an abandoned idea, was that the superhero, I think, has 4 mounting points.
Yeah.
And you can see this on where the pack is now, in which if you look at the 10 and 2 o'clock positions on the Alice frame, on the actual pipe steel, there's on the power cell side a hole that goes right through, and then on the motherboard another hole that's unused lines up with it. And then on the opposite side, on the gun box side, there's a hole in the motherboard, and there is a hole on the back side of the Alice frame, and then there is a poorly patched metal patch on the front of the frame. And going back and looking at information, I think the superhero was actually, I think the frame was riveted to the motherboard.
Well, and
I think
especially, excuse me, if that's the first one built and it's the prototype of sorts. I mean, yeah, I can absolutely see them trying, mounting that thing directly to the motherboard versus, the spacers and all that stuff.
But then I think they went back and they said, hey, we can actually do this with 3 points.
Yeah.
And they added the spacers, of course.
See, something I'm curious about with the whole superhero pack is if it is the first one that was built, and they learned the things they can do differently for the other packs, why were those changes not implemented to that pack before filming? Why did they just keep it in the state that it was in?
Well, I mean, the pack is used for about 13 seconds in Ghostbusters.
Yeah. But you would still think that they would go ahead and make all of them identical before filming even started.
I don't know. I have to disagree. I think it would have already been built, and they would have said, okay, well, these are the improvements that we can make for actors' comfort or expedition of the building process. Because the big differences are the bar graph, how the motherboard is mounted to the Alice frame, and then the foam is another big difference. But they're mostly actor comfort changes from a side of the location of the L fitting on the ion arm. On the superhero, it's in what is traditionally called the Ghostbusters 2 configuration, in which that hex fitting is on the ion arm itself, and then in all the other packs has the square fitting on the ion arm cap. Well, it ends up, from a production standpoint, making sense to just put it on that cap, because drill, both pieces right there, put in a smaller fitting, you get the same effect. So you're cutting down on how many times you have to revisit a piece to drill it out. So for those, but it's so little as far as what you're going to be able to identify on screen. They probably just didn't care. They're like, yeah, this thing's really, really fucking uncomfortable, but you guys are wearing it for, maybe an hour.
Yeah.
And they just said, go. We made your other packs more comfortable. So leave us alone.
I mean, as far as the bar graph goes, I'm sure they may have only found the one at Apex, and okay, this is our insert one. We'll use it for the close-ups for the
Well, no,
inserts,
because
which is what they did.
they all have bar graphs on them.
But they only had one
They
that
all
animated.
they only have one that animated, so there was only one that they put together the particular circuitry to drive it. All the other
Yeah.
ones they at least got to light up.
Were
So they
all
all
the
have
other ones...
Whamco bar graphs.
So they're all Whamcos.
Even the ghost traps, they are the ghost traps
Okay.
and the Proton.
Oh, that's
Pack
right.
ones
I forget
all
about the
have-
ones in the ghost trap.
They all have Whamco bar graphs, but the superhero is the only one that has a bar graph that dances, and then the ghost traps are the only ones that have pulsing bar graphs.
Yeah, I forget about the.
But they only pulse one direction. They just scroll up and then it stays solid.
Yeah.
And then all the other hero Proton packs all have just they come on and they stay solid.
Gotcha. Okay. For whatever reason, I was under the impression that the other wands didn't have Whamco bar graphs. They just had a facsimile of a Whamco in there.
Nope, they have Whamcos in there. But here's what's even more interesting that's never really talked about. So, and this is just a thought that occurred to me. The ghost traps, when they activate the power, the Whamco bar graph crawls up,
Mm-hmm.
and then it stays solid. So we've always made the assumption that the superhero has the only bar graph that dances, but we've only ever seen it crawl up.
Yeah.
So we don't actually know now. Jesus Christ, we don't actually know if that's just not a part of the Whamco turning on.
Yeah, it's true. But I mean, surely there would be some footage somewhere in the movie that one of the other ones would fire up and you would see
There
it scroll.
is. We have the footage. We have the footage of behind the scenes from one of the first Ghostbusters making of featurettes that shows the superhero thrower with the bar graph actually pulsing instead of just going up. I take it all back.
Okay.
I take it all back. I didn't have an epiphany. Fuck me.
What? We'll edit this out.
Well, no, we're gonna leave it in because I mean that's as much of what this podcast is about. It's about discovery.
It's about
It's why
being right and then being wrong and then being right again.
Well, I mean,
Or
but
vice
that's
versa.
that's the entire ethos of Spengler's 1984 workbench. It's like, let's keep diving into these things. If we have things that we thought we knew, let's challenge them.
Yeah.
Let's apply the bona fide scientific method to it and see if this information still stands up. And there's been stuff where we've been like, oh no, this doesn't stand up.
Yeah.
The neck padding is a great example. Julian Legg, who is completed his phenomenal conversion of an Iona shoe polisher into a PKE meter, was one of the first people that ever came to me and said, hey, the neck padding in Ghostbusters 1, it's not black or gray, it's white. I'm like, what? Fuck off. And then he sends me all these photographs, and it's like there's black tape on it and shots of spray paint on the side, but the damn things are white. And then you go back and start really looking at the packs. It's amazing to me how many things we think we know, and because we just accept that detail as it is, we end up missing these details that are staring us in the face.
Yeah, I mean, well, again, like the
green lever.
The green lever, yeah. I love when somebody finds something just completely minuscule like that.
Yeah.
But the level of, I don't know if it's just because there's nothing new going on in terms of major discoveries. So the neck foam's actually white. I get all giddy. I get butterflies in my stomach. I'm like,
I get excited.
What? I mean, I get to update my pack.
Oh, I get excited.
Yeah.
There's a big feature on the superhero. Now, I'm sticking to my guns on this one. So in Ghostbusters, the power cell lights on the superhero are not mounted to the motherboard.
Yeah,
and again,
they're mounted into the shell.
They're mounted. I believe that they're mounted in the shell. Now, some people that have had close contact, very close personal contact with with the superhero shell are saying, "Oh no, that's not what this is for." But I disagree, and I'm going to continue to disagree because they were definitely mounted in a different way in the first movie. In the first movie, there is no evidence on the power cell of rivets being there to hold a shelf for the power cell lights. But when you open up that shell and you look inside, there is a big shank of aluminum right next to the power cell that has two big bolts going through the shell into this piece of aluminum that has since been jaggedly cut away. And I think that is the remnants, the leftover of the original power cell mounting point.
I mean, that would make sense to me.
I mean, I can't be convinced otherwise. I've been told that it was just used for like a leveling kind of thing, and I'm like, nah, that doesn't make sense either.
A leveling kind of thing?
Yeah, I guess to judge how far the power cell lights need to be from the motherboard to communicate directly through the shell. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm calling BS on that.
I mean,
again, though,
and I'm not trying to challenge anybody's authority or information. But again, how do we know that?
Right.
How do you know that's what that's for?
We know that the power cell wasn't mounted to the motherboard in 1983.
Yeah.
We know that because we've seen photographs. So where else is it mounting to?
Yeah.
Well, here's the only evidence of another mounting point.
Well, and what's interesting to me is how much, what kind of changes have been made to these packs that we don't even know about.
Oh, God.
You know what I mean? Like things that may or may not have been present in 84 that we just don't know about, whether it be internal.
We know that they at least stripped down the wands at one point. Because the superhero wand goes through a big facelift from Ghostbusters to Ghostbusters 2.
Yeah.
And we know the other wands did as well. We know that, most of the wands had Legree banjos on them, and then when they were updated for Ghostbusters 2, they ended up getting Nycoil banjos, including the superhero. The superhero got that upgrade. We know that all the black knobs on the superhero were replaced with exposed aluminum wands. Even the superhero itself even had a new knob put on it that had numbers on it. These changes happened, but they weren't present in Ghostbusters 1, and it's so difficult to ascertain the changes.
Yeah, well,
and the only way to do that is to look at photo reference from the first movie.
Yeah. Well, and like the rear cylinder.
Yes.
Why is it bare? Is it bare in the movie? I've never been able to find any frame or any behind the scenes shot where it's bare.
Me and I had a 2:00 in the morning brainstorming session with Mikhail about that.
I've had many of those.
He's great for those.
I love them.
So I was convinced that the rear cylinder was not present in Ghostbusters. I was under the impression
at all on any of them, or just the superhero?
Just on the superhero. Okay. I was under the impression that they removed that cylinder specifically for that close-up shot, so that the bar graph wouldn't have any hose or anything like that in front of it. And knowing Hollywood, that's a fair and reasonable assumption. But Mikhail was able to find me photographic evidence of the green hose being there in other shots. And we went through so many frames, especially of Ernie Hudson drawing, when they're walking up towards Gozer and Ernie Hudson draws his wand, when they're doing the heat 'em up sequence. He's wearing the superhero Proton Pack at that moment for just a few seconds. And there's no flash of silver.
Okay.
But you can see silver on the other wands from the knobs and things like that. So it ends up being reasonable to assume that if there was an exposed piece on there at that time, that you would be able to see it. But it's not, and the green hose is there. And that's something another buddy of mine, Bart, had always told me, no, it's black in there, you're wrong. I said, no, prove it to me. And we finally have the proof, so he rubs it in my face all the time. But then, yeah, as you said, the superhero now has a complete raw aluminum rear cylinder. And actually, in my build, I am keeping it raw aluminum.
That's not screen accurate, Dan.
I know it's not. But, and I went back and forth because you're right, it's not screen accurate, but I spent so much time thinking that cylinder wasn't there or that it would end up being raw aluminum that I ended up deciding that I'm going to keep that particular part raw aluminum as a reminder that we're still learning.
Yeah. Or you can make two and swap them out when you feel like it.
I could. I absolutely could. So when I see you with it, I'll make sure I swap it out for a black one.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes, especially since you have that Afterlife pack that doesn't have a rotating front barrel.
Hey,
Mm-hmm.
We all got our thing,
but
right?
No, we all have our inaccurate thing.
Yeah.
But it's pretty with that exposed rear cylinder.
It is. I like it. I like the two-tone nature of.
It just adds a little bit extra character to it, but we don't know why. Matt Burkett had an interesting theory. He thinks that the rear cylinder not only was the rear mounting point for the pop mechanism spring, he also believes that it was the grounding point for a lot of the electrics in the wand body.
Okay.
And he had postulated that perhaps the reason why it is now exposed aluminum was due to an electrical issue.
Okay.
And that it basically got shocked off. But again, we don't actually know.
Yeah, I mean, it could be any reason.
It absolutely could. We will never know. But listen, Austin, we've successfully gotten through episode 5.
Yeah, we made it.
And we made it. We talked about the origin of the Proton Pack. We talked about the superhero, my all-time favorite Proton Pack. But we still have more to talk about. But we're going to save that for episode 2 or part 2, I should say, session 6, part 2, Ghostbusters 1 Proton Packs. We're going to talk about the other hero Proton Packs. And of course, I'm sure we'll talk about the superheroes some more. But we did it, bud. We're through session 5.
I am so happy that it's still going.
I am too. I'm very pleased as punch. I'm excited to maybe bring some more updates to my IDW pack next week. I'm excited, of course, to know what you're working on. I'm excited for you to get your box set. I'm hoping you get a chance to watch that.
It's supposed to be here tomorrow, so I know what I'm doing.
All right. I got my fingers crossed. So we are now over our time. So I'm going to go ahead, put the shout-outs. If you want to join the discussion, guys, check us out. Spengler's 1984 Workbench. If you want to like us on Facebook, it's the Black Firehouse Podcast. You can like us on Twitter. You can like us on Instagram. Austin here does an amazing job of pushing out some really fantastic prop-related articles. And of course, we reference religiously here is going to be the Ghostbusters Reference Library, also on Facebook.com. Give us a like on Spotify. You can also check us out on our RSS feed, and we normally post to YouTube every Friday. We're a little behind schedule, and we do apologize for that. So Session 4 will be on YouTube soon, and of course Session 5 to be expected on YouTube this Friday as well. This is Dan Harshman and
Austin Young
for the Black Firehouse Podcast, wishing you guys a great evening, and hey, go out and build something.
As a duly designated representative of the city, I order you to cease any and all supernatural activity and return forthwith to your place of origin or to the nearest convenient parallel dimension.
Okay, so I'll see you later, huh? I'll give you a call.
Everything was fine with our system until the power grid was shut off by Dickless here.
2 in the box!
Ready to go.
We be fast and
They explode.
Ray has gone bye-bye, you done. What have you done left?
for whatever reasons, Ray, call it fate, call it luck, call it karma. I believe that everything happens for a reason. I believe that we were destined to get thrown out of this dome. For what purpose? To go into business for ourselves.
Boy, the superintendent's gonna be pissed.
We're ready to believe you.